Even in 2023, BSG somehow keeps adding old school weapons to Tarkov. They have so many options, so many modern marvels that could be put into the game, and yet they continue to indulge those who are purists, only using weapons from at least 40 years ago. I kid. Honestly, the addition of old guns is honestly awesome, and kind of pays them homage while also allowing people to somewhat experience what they were like. And with the addition of the SVT into the game, players can now harken back to a simpler time. An easy-to-use rifle that is simple in its design, but is still deadly, even with how many other powerful weapons are on offer in this game. I have a strange feeling that the SVT will prove its worth being in Tarkov, and will become the new Menace of the mid-game we all thought the Vepr Hunter originally would become. The SVT is unlocked for both a raw purchase and a barter option at Prep or level 2, which means your account needs to be level 15 before you can really start to use the rifle consistently. You can have your scav spawn with one and take it out for a spin that way, but that's only happened to me once so far. The rifle itself is very straightforward. The only choice you must make with the weapon is, do you want to run a scope or not? If so, then by adding the rail system for the weapon, you can attach the Mosin's PU scope and use that as your ranged option. I know for some people it is a letdown because they may not like the PU scope, but as someone who doesn't mind it, I would honestly say it functions better on the SVT than it does the Mosin. I can't put into words why it feels that way. Maybe because the scope sits directly in the middle of the rifle instead of off to the side like on the Mosin, or maybe it boils down to the SVT simply being semi-auto instead of a bolt-action rifle. That alone makes such a massive gameplay difference. Rapidly being able to fire another shot to guarantee a 2-tap in almost any situation feels much better. It's closer to a cheaper, more budget SVD, which I guess makes sense given the naming convention of these weapons, although after a quick Google search, I don't think they have any real relation to another one of each other in terms of the SVD being a modernized SVT, but hey, we all just learned something new, I guess. The weapon has only 10 and 15 round mags respectively to choose from, but again, your only option at the start are the 10 rounders. And something I actually learned very recently while loading into a raid is that the SVT can actually be top loaded as well, even with the PU scope attached. I saw my character do it and I was like, wait, can you actually top load it? And apparently you can. Which I mean, it's twice as much as the Vepr Hunter initially, 10 round versus 5 rounds, and the Vepr Hunter can only go up to 10 rounds for its highest capacity. So already the SVT takes the cake in terms of magazine size. I will say as well that the SVT simply takes up less real estate on your screen than the Vepr Hunter does. Even with the lowest mount possible on the Hunter, any large scope really harms your ability to see. But the SVT doesn't have that issue considering the PU scope is your only option for range, and it's relatively small in comparison to a lot of the other scopes out there. This is much more minor point, but as someone who appreciates all the little details in all kinds of video games, the little noises the SVT makes when you interact with it, swap weapons, check the mag, the chamber, oh, it's all wonderful goodness to hear. It's kind of like how the HK for years used to make that little sound whenever you did anything with it, but that for some reason was switched over to the G28, or how the AUG also makes these kinds of weapon clacking and clanking sounds whenever you do something with it as well. I know it can be annoying for some people to hear, but I personally love it. It gives weapons just that little extra bit of personality to them, instead of always hearing the same sound effect for swapping on or off your weapons. Again, some people will certainly not like it and think it's annoying after hearing it a couple times, but in a game where there is a sea of weapon options available, it helps to distinguish yourself amongst the crowd even just that little bit extra. And it is those little extra sound effects like this weapon has that can really make it become a favorite in the eyes of those who decide to use it. Honestly, everyone should try this weapon. Like I said at the start, I have a weird feeling this weapon will become what we thought the Vepr Hunter would become when it was added to the game many years ago. I've been making a lot of comparisons to the Vepr Hunter in this video because, well, it's the weapon with the most common with the SVT. A low capacity, low modular assault carbine that packs a powerful round into a simple package. The SVT's 7.62x54R and the Hunter's 7.62x51 NATO are both strong ammos and very popular in Tarkov, especially in the late game. With their ability to 2 or sometimes even 1-tap the juiciest of PMCs, people go out of their way to run the ammo as often as possible. And both weapons are solid budget options for people still leveling up their character, the vendors, and maybe don't have access to the powerful weapons that these ammos use. When we initially saw the Hunter come into the game, it caused quite a bit of a stir because it looked like people were going to run that and have it become the new naked PMC loadout, similarly to how we still have Moslings running around even to this day. Same thing but with the Vepr Hunter. But surprisingly, that ended up not being the case. It was too heavy, clunky, and inconsistent to run like that, and the screen space it takes up with any scope attached to it can quickly become problematic. However, the SVT doesn't have the same problems. It's smaller on your screen, takes up way less space even with the PU on it, and has twice as much ammo in the magazine right off the bat, and it's very similar price to the Vepr Hunter. The only thing the Hunter does have going for it over the SVT is that it can be suppressed. Sadly, the SVT doesn't have a way to run the weapon quietly, which if it did, would easily make it one of the best early to mid-game weapons on offer. And honestly, I still have this sentiment even without a suppressor. Oh, and I almost even forgot to mention, but alongside the SVT, there was also the AVT that got added into the game, which is pretty much the exact same gun, however, it can be fired fully automatic. Yes, a full auto 7.62 by 54R rifle. Granted, it's an older gun, it can only have up to 15 rounds, it has bad ergo, and you can't put the PU scope on it. But man, you grab an AVT and run that on factory and you might be able to have great success with it. The SVT, I think, is going to be a common sight in Tarkov for the time being. It might not last all the way to endgame, but for levels 15 to, I'd say, 25 or even 30, I suspect people will use this as a fallback to something other than the Mosin. Unless they need the Mosin for a quest, it doesn't make sense to run it over the SVT. It does its job better in almost every regard. As someone who has ran the SVT for only a handful of raids, I already enjoy it a ton and will be using it plenty as a simple, cheap, and effective rifle, and I encourage anyone who hasn't tried it and has access to it to do the same. You'd be surprised how effective you can be with it, even with just T46 ammo. I said this at the start, but it's not going to surprise me if this becomes the new Menace of the mid-game. In fact, I kind of welcome it, but we shall see. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. Let me know in the comments down below what your thoughts on the SVT are. Do you enjoy using it? Do you have any personal gripes with it? Let us know, and be sure to subscribe for more videos about weapons in the game that have the potential to shift the meta entirely on its head. I hope to see you in future ones.